Welcome to Independent Sources. We're bringing you this edition from the studio at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism. I'm Vianora Vinca. It's been a year since Congress approved the stimulus package requested by the Obama administration. The economic plan allocates nearly $787 billion to state and local governments to help jumpstart the failing U.S. economy. But has the money actually made an impact in immigrants and communities of color? On this edition of Independent Sources, how the ethnic media is monitoring the money trail, the cancellation of Carnival in Haiti, and the meaning of no mass, and a new blog that hopes to heal the wounds suffered by Liberians. We'll have those stories and more after this.
There are other larger issues and more important issues that need to be covered that we have to ensure that are in there, because folks will not find it in the Times or in some of the other papers. We have to make sure that that news that is ignored or missed, that we pick that up from week to week.
Immigrants and communities of color have been particularly hard hit by the economic downturn. So journalists in the ethnic media say it's especially important that they understand how to track and report on where the stimulus dollars are being distributed. To look at this issue, I'm joined in the studio by Eva Sanchis of El Diario La Prensa, and joining us via Skype from San Francisco is Aaron Glantz of New America Media. Welcome.
It's my pleasure.
Aaron, let me start with you. Explain the significance of this initiative for ethnic communities as well as the journalists involved in the initiative.
Well, the $787 billion stimulus package that President Obama signed a year ago this week is the largest public investment in our country since the Great Depression. And we at New America Media thought it was very important that across this country, ethnic communities be able to investigate to what extent those dollars are going to their communities and to what extent their communities are being bypassed.
And had it not been for your initiative, how would the ethnic press been able to cover stories related to the stimulus?
Well, I mean, the ethnic press is a vital sector in our country, and they're going to go forward and cover their communities regardless of whether we have a fellowship to offer. But I think what we were able to do through a grant from the Open Society Institute is hold briefings around the country in 8 cities, including New York, do 4-hour trainings with journalists from all the ethnic media about where exactly the money is going in their community. For example, many in New York might be surprised to learn that the Housing Authority is the #1 recipient of stimulus money in New York City. How are those dollars being spent? The #2 recipient is the Brooklyn schools. How are those dollars being spent? And then we also thought it was important, all of us journalists are always strapped for time and we're strapped for money. And we created a fellowship program that 13 journalists were able to take advantage of, including Eva Sanchis, who you also have on this program, to really dig deep into what's happening in their own communities during this economic recession.
What does it personally mean to you, Eva, to be part of this initiative and be able to do the reports that you do?
I mean, for me, it was like really important because to be able to be in a group of journalists who were gonna like cover like how the stimulus plan had an impact on the ethnic community that we cover was important in terms of having the support. Like we got to know like through Aaron and the people in the fellowship, like many experts on the stimulus plan, and the stimulus bill is a complex one. So, you know, for an ethnic journalist who is covering, you know, the community, but also we have to understand like this complex bill and the impact that it has in our community. I think without the support of the fellowship would have been like much more difficult, even though, you know, as Aaron says, like we try to cover the community, but this would have been like something like so complex, so difficult that I think having the support and being with other like ethnic journalists trying to understand that was kind of very encouraging and made the trip like much easier.
And you had 2 stories that actually made the front page of El Diario. Tell us more about the topics that you raised.
What I was interested in looking into was how the stimulus plan could help like this Hispanic community of Bushwick. And basically, I wanted to look into the foreclosure crisis and the impact that had in the community, and how the stimulus plan could help like these Hispanic homeowners that had like these houses for 30, 40 years, and they got cut into this bad like mortgage, in these bad mortgages, and now we're going to lose the houses that they had for 30 years. So I wanted to look into Bushwick because I hadn't read anything about, you know, the foreclosure crisis in Bushwick and the impact that it had had. And, you know, I found out that one of the zip codes, one of the 10 zip codes with the highest foreclosure crisis was in Bushwick. So basically, I wanted to look into that.
And Aaron, you have also written an article about the fact that only a very small percentage of minority-owned businesses benefited from stimulus money. In some states, you said zero money went to minority-owned businesses, and the issue was also picked up by the mainstream media. To what extent do you think that stories like the one you wrote resonate with the federal and state officials?
Well, I was really pleased that a month after I wrote my story about the fact that 91% of the firms that got small business loans through the stimulus package were white-owned, and that, as you stated, in 5 states, no loans went to businesses owned by people of color, and in a number of additional states, only 1 loan, including Nevada and Louisiana, which are very diverse states, only 1 loan went to a business of color. A month later, I tried to follow up on that, and the Small Business Administration spokesperson in Washington actually hung up on me, and he said that their office had been deluged with calls. The national lobbyist for the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce told me that Senator Menendez of New Jersey was looking into introducing legislation around the issue. This is possible not only when we do good stories, but it's also possible when we work together and we distribute our work within the ethnic press and to the mainstream media. And one of the things that I'm really proud about affiliating myself with Eva and Cristina Pastor of the Philippine News, another New York-based journalist doing great work through this fellowship, Mohsen Zahir of the Pakistani newspaper, another excellent journalist doing work through the Stimulus Fellowship offered by New American Media, is that story by story we begin to build a picture of how the stimulus and the economy is really affecting each and every one of our communities. And when you look at what the mainstream media is doing, the mainstream media is always looking for the silly story. You know, there was a report out here in California that there was about $50 million of stimulus money going towards a wine train in the Napa Valley. And this was cited as an example of how money was being wasted. But what's more relevant, I found, to communities around the country is the money going to us? Are we getting a fair share? And those are questions that I don't see asked so much in mainstream media. We have to ask them.
And Aaron, what other stories are in the works at NAM?
Well, as I mentioned, Cristina Pastor of the Philippine News, she has a really fantastic 4-part series, which is currently running, about how Filipino World War II veterans are going to be compensated or not thanks to the stimulus. They've had to wait 60 years to get the kind of compensation that most of veterans from our greatest generation of World War II received many, many years ago. We have a great story running from Khalil Al-Hajjal of the Arab American News, who went and called a number of businesses in the Detroit area that are Arab American owned that were listed as having gotten stimulus money through loans from banks, and found that although the government approved the loans, the banks didn't cough up the money. We have a story from Charles Hallman of the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder that states a Black Weekly, talking about the fact that while a lot of stimulus money has gone to build transportation improvements in the suburban parts of Minneapolis, St. Paul, almost none of it has gone to the urban core where a majority of the city's Black residents live. These are the kinds of stories that we're seeing, and also a few positive stories. Marconi Almeida of the Brazilian Journal, for example, did a story about how thanks to the stimulus, health clinics, which serve primarily immigrants, have been able to expand in the state of Massachusetts. Sister Charlene Mohammed of The Final Call did a very nice story about an Afrocentric school in Philadelphia that received stimulus money and was able to expand. So both positive and negative, but the systematic trend that we see is mostly negative.
And Eva, what should he expect to see from you in the upcoming weeks?
Actually, what we would like to do at the newspaper that we tried, but I didn't have enough time to do, we would like to set up a blog in Bushwick and cover other aspects of how the stimulus funds have had an impact in the community. We would like to look, for example, how many jobs have been created through the stimulus funds in the Bushwick community, because the community has high unemployment, and there are hundreds of workers that work in the factories in the Bushwick-Williamsburg sector that, manufacturing sector has shred a lot of jobs in the past few years. And I would like to look into if stimulus funds have been spent to retrain these workers. So these are some of the stories that we hope to work in the next few months.
And we'll have to leave it at that. Eva Sanchis of El Diario and Aaron Glantz of New America Media, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now here's Abi Ishola with some other news.
Thanks, Vianora. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic media. The Amsterdam News reports that Mayor Bloomberg has given the green light to close the city's largest 24-hour drop-in homeless shelter to save the city $1 million this year. This while the city has over 30,000 homeless people living in shelters. Public advocate Bill de Blasio doesn't agree with Bloomberg's decision. He says he will be working closely with the mayor's office to find a better solution to budget problems. Are Chinatown buses a hotspot for immigration raids? The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says no, but members of the Chinatown Bus Company think differently. They say buses in Manhattan, New Jersey, and Georgia have been targeted. One Chinatown bus company reported that on February 3rd, law enforcement officials boarded a bus in Buffalo, checked the immigration status of each passenger, then detained 3 undocumented immigrants. From the Filipino Reporter, a Filipino woman has been arrested for running a multi-million-dollar pyramid scheme that targeted Filipino immigrants in New York. Razel Canedo told victims that she would invest their money in one of her 2 companies to pay for training, immigration expenses, and placement services for nurses from the Philippines who wanted to work in the U.S. Instead, she allegedly put most of the money in the overseas account. Canedo was arrested in Atlantic City last month and charged with 1 count of mail fraud and 1 count of wire fraud. And finally, an Auschwitz survivor has found her voice in hip-hop. 85-year-old Esther Bejarano survived Auschwitz by playing the accordion for other detainees as they arrived at the concentration camp. Today, she has adopted a gangster rap sound to spread a message of anti-racism throughout Germany. Those are just a few headlines from the ethnic media. Back to you, Vianora.
An earthquake did what even coup d'etats never accomplished in Haiti. It forced the cancellation of Carnival. Carnival is Haiti's biggest celebration in a country where there's usually little to celebrate, and many Haitians say they miss it. Still, Haitians understand why it was called off in the wake of the devastating natural disaster. With me to talk about the significance of Carnival to Haiti is Gina Faustin. Her show, Gina's Weekend, is seen on cable networks in New York. Thanks for being here, Gina. Allergies and all?
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
The Carnival is the single most important event in Haiti, attracting millions of people from the inside of the country as well as the diaspora. And it's taken place despite military coup, despite dictatorships, bloodshed or hurricanes. And this time is the first time that it's not going to happen. It's all much different, right, Gina?
It is totally different. It's one of those occasions where many of us, we've gone through so much as far as, like you said, it's the coup d'etats and the reversals and all the problems we had. But Carnival has remained one of the few treasures that Haitians actually hold on to deep to our heart. And then this is it's the biggest party where we tend to forget everything. We forget our heartaches, we forget our troubles, we forget the class problem, we forget the politics. We just forget, you forget your enemies, you embrace everyone. This is one of the few occasions where we just feel like, oh, we put everything down and then we're celebrating. And then for Carnival not to happen this year, it is so significant. with the trauma that and the devastation that has happened in Haiti, that I don't think anyone felt in their heart the will to just go and be part of this massive party this year.
And what does it mean to the country not having the carnival this year?
I think to the country, I think to different people it means different thing. You have some people are not, some of them were, a little bit more conservative, and they say, well, we'll watch it on television. And then you have the heart and soul of the country, where when the drums and the compa and the costumes and just the ambiance makes you feel good for that one day. I think it's devastating in one way, but it's necessary on the other side. I think it's necessary because right now not too many people know how to celebrate. I mean, you have so many homelessness, you have so many injured, you have, my God, the emotional toll, the psychological toll, the physical toll is so great. And where will Carnival go? We don't even have a White House anymore. It has totally collapsed. And people used to look forward to having the bands just driving by, the parade, driving in front of the White House, and the president and the staff just to say hello and then just to salute the president. That cannot happen. The police department is no longer there. So there's really, I mean, what exactly will the parade look like, and where will you go? So on the other side, it just could not happen.
Has there been any sort of talk about whether or not there should be a carnival?
I think even if there were, some people were just basically afraid to even think about it. And I think because of the way things are, even the Minister of Culture, I remember we met with her about a few weeks ago, and everyone talked about Carnival, but it's not possible.
Carnival has been a source of revenue for the country by bringing in many tourists from all over the world. Now that there's not a carnival, what's the economic impact on the country?
I think financially it's a huge impact. It will have a huge impact on the financial and the economy of the country, because again, it is one of the biggest parades. It's the biggest event that usually happens in Haiti. You have Haitian Americans who for months, a year in advance, they book their flights and they've already planned their vacation around Carnival time. Again, you buy the hats and the costumes and the T-shirts and the stands where everyone sits, and you have others who do business, and the guy who makes the hat, the guy who makes the fried, the Mardi Gras or the Fat Tuesday. I mean, just it seems like everyone is in the action. The economy is booming for that one particular time of the year, and for it not to happen, I think it is really bad for the economy for it not to happen. It's hard. Most of the hotels are usually booked, sold out. You can't find a space open in Port-au-Prince and in Pétionville and in the suburbs. There's nothing available. So not to have Carnival, it is very, very bad for the economy. But then we understand.
You've been to Haiti since the earthquake hit. What was your experience going there?
Actually, on January, the earthquake happened on the 12th. On the 17th, we flew to the Dominican Republic, since that was the only place to go. And we had already planned that trip. So while we're there, we figured we would try to go across the border. But at that time, it was almost impossible for any non-military unit or any rescue team to try to get through the border. They had shut down the border of the Dominican Republic. And then we found out that many of the injured were being transported to many of the hospitals in Santo Domingo. So we had our camera crew, and many of us, we went to find out how bad it was. Oh my goodness. I mean, we watched it in the news, we saw it on television, you heard about it, but until you actually saw it, and then, we spoke to the injured, and then we touched them, and it was the most devastating thing I've ever seen in my life. From the babies 1 month old with the crushed leg, to the 3-year-old and the 6-year-old with amputees, missing the arm and the legs, and then just the young women who have the crushed breasts, the young man, 23 years old, who's all these genitals, everything was gone. It was amputated. And those the doctors were just sitting there not knowing what to do. They didn't have the medication. And it was from one to the next. It was a nightmare. It was really, really sad. I didn't expect to see what we saw, and it was one of those experiences that we will never, ever forget.
In the 1 minute that we have left, of course, it will take a long time for the country and people to recover from this devastation. What should we hope for next year related to the Carnival? Do you think that Carnival will resume next year, and will it ever be the same?
You know, I'm one who tends to be very optimistic because I love Carnival. Carnival's in my blood. It's in my vein. I think Carnival it's part of us. It's part of Haiti. And I hope next year there will be somehow, some way to bring back Carnival because it is good for our economy. It is good to bring tourists in Haiti. And I hope next year that there's some kind of a revival where we can try to fix as much as we can so we can bring as many tourists to Haiti so we can celebrate our culture again.
Good for the economy and good for the soul.
Absolutely, right? All the time.
Gina Faustin, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back.
The images from Haiti are heartbreaking. Homes, hospitals, and schools are destroyed. Families searching for loved ones, parents trying to feed their children. But we can all do something. We can help the American Red Cross as it delivers the food, water, and medicine that can save lives. Donate $10 by texting Haiti to 90999. Visit redcross.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS. Thanks for your help.
During the years when civil war was tearing their country apart, a sizable number of Liberians fled to the U.S. and settled in Staten Island. They were relieved to have escaped the violence in their African homeland, but hurt by the chilly reception in Staten Island's African-American community. Ceasefire Liberia is a new blog meant to help ease the pain. Michelle García reports.
On Staten Island streets, stories are told of war and revenge.
One of my friends, he told me, so, do you know the guy? I said, who? He said, the guy who sitting next to him. He said, he killed your mother.
In the halls and parking lots of the Park Hill Housing Project, Liberians struggle to adjust.
We don't really have nothing to go back to. Like, we don't really know where we don't really have a place to call home, basically, and that's like the worst thing. What up?
These are the stories that appear on Ceasefire Liberia, a blog meant to connect Liberians in the U.S. with Liberians back home.
For the Ceasefire Liberia blog, we want people doing videos, we want people doing photography.
Ruthie Ackerman traveled to Liberia to report on the African nation's struggle to end civil war, a war that cost some 150,000 lives. And once back in the U.S., she turned her attention to Liberian youth on Staten Island, among them Nate Jeffries.
She got people doing a lot of things. Like me, for one, I used to just sit down, and the rest of us used to sit down doing nothing until she came along. And she actually came and basically handed out cameras.
I know you all have seen it, but this is the flip video camera. And there's so many different levels of audience, I think, for this kind of project. One is the youth themselves, the youth in Staten Island themselves, because a lot of the young people don't even know about other youth that are living in their communities. So other Liberians that possibly came at different times than they came.
And she says the blog is meant to clear up illusions that Liberians on Staten Island live a life of riches.
What's real is people in America going through struggle, you know, come over here thinking that everything is just going to be a handout and people just going to roll out the red carpet for us. But to give you a job, we make $7 an hour.
Garretson Sherman arrived on Staten Island 2 years ago, a survivor of war, new to the U.S., and on top of that, with family in Liberia depending on him for help.
All they know you have all the money because you came from America.
And with Liberians fleeing war, encountered in the Park Hill apartments was another war zone.
Welcome to homicide housing, killer hell with shit is real. Where robberies turn homicides to get a meal. The young niggas that's on the grind is dripping stale. Living by the one rule of the hood, killer be killed.
At one point, every Tuesday and Thursdays, police used to come. They'll come from that place, they'll come from up the block, and they'll come from there. And they'll basically, anybody in the street, they used to do this sweep. They'll grab us, throw us on the wall, and arrest us or whatever. They used to do this all the time. Like, we didn't even know it was legal till they actually killed that kid Rabbit right there, and they choked him in front of everybody.
These streets have been Nate's home since he arrived with his parents from Liberia, a young immigrant of 8 years old. But now he's a grown man, and his parents are back in Liberia, deported after getting caught up in Park Hill's thriving drug business.
Well, this basically is the mural. They got the names of people that was killed, some of them by police and some of them by gun violence.
And still, despite their compelling personal stories, Ackerman has at times struggled to keep the bloggers on project.
I think for the majority of the bloggers that I work with, a lot of them feel like, who cares? Nobody cares about my story. They get that impression from everyday life in the United States, I think. I think, one, race issues, being black, especially on Staten Island, where it's very segregated, being a refugee, where there's already a stigma attached to that. There isn't a lot of access to services anyways. And so I think that a lot of the young people feel like they're falling through the cracks in many ways and that no one really notices them.
And then there's the tricky politics between African Americans and African immigrants, an issue that comes up often among her bloggers.
You don't accept me nowhere.
Each of them carries a story inside about identity, about surviving.
The rain of bullet.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a situation where you are caught in the crossfire. You have nowhere to turn. You only head to the direction your mind tells you to go to. People get separated. People have to find themselves with a wrong group, with a good group. Sometimes you end up becoming the kind of person you have never thought of being in life. You know what I'm saying?
Stories that need an outlet for people whose scars are still healing. For Independent Sources, I'm Michelle Garcia.
That's our show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week. In the meantime, be independent-minded.